Today, I'm about to tell you stories from World War II that you probably never heard before, secrets that were hidden in classified files for decades. Did you know there were plans for an invisible army, bat bombs, and even an aircraft carrier made entirely of ice? It sounds unbelievable, right? But these were real projects that could have changed the course of history. And some were so advanced, they make modern technology look like child's play. Stay with us, because today we're uncovering the most mind-blowing weapons and technologies from World War II that the history books never told you about. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Chapter 1. The Ghost Army, Masters of Illusion. It's 1944, just after the D-Day landings in Normandy. The Allies need to distract the Germans, making them think an entire army is preparing to strike from a completely different location. So they call in the Ghost Army, a unit shrouded in secrecy and armed not with guns, but with deception. The Ghost Army was a unique unit made up of 1,100 men, many of whom were artists, actors, and sound engineers. Their mission was to fool the enemy using visual and auditory illusions. They deployed inflatable tanks, fake artillery, and even set up dummy airfields. But here's something most people don't know. They also used special paint techniques to create realistic shadows and camouflage, making these fake units look incredibly convincing from the air and from a distance. To sell the deception even further, the Ghost Army used what they called spoof radio, broadcasting fake radio transmissions in the exact style of real military communications. And it wasn't just soldiers doing this. Professional actors were brought in to mimic the voices and accents of high-ranking officers to add authenticity. In one daring move near the town of Metz, they convinced the Germans that a large U.S. force was assembling for an attack. This misdirection caused the Germans to divert troops, giving the real Allied forces a significant advantage. Chapter 2. The Bat Bomb, Nature's Deadly Allies. If you thought the Ghost Army was inventive, wait until you hear about the Bat Bomb. Yes, real bats carrying bombs. This wasn't just an idea tossed around a meeting room. This was a fully developed weapon by the United States. The Bat Bomb was a brainchild of a dental surgeon named Lytellus Adams. Inspired after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Adams proposed using bats, which are nocturnal and could carry small incendiary devices. The plan was to release these bats from planes at dawn over Japanese cities. The bats, seeking dark places to roost, would fly into attics and under roofs of buildings, most of which were made of wood and paper. Once the timers on their bombs were set off, the resulting fires would spread rapidly. But here's the kicker. During one of the tests, a group of bats escaped from the testing base in New Mexico, roosted under a nearby fuel tank, and accidentally set part of the base on fire. This mishap, along with the development of the atomic bomb, ultimately led to the project cancellation. Still, the Bat Bomb remains one of the most unusual and imaginative weapons ever conceived. Chapter 3. The Fritz X, the world's first smart bomb. As the Allies experimented with deception and unusual tactics, the Germans focused on precision. The Fritz X, one of the world's first precision-guided weapons, a guided bomb that could be controlled remotely from a bomber. The Fritz X wasn't a bomb that just dropped and hoped to hit its target. It was steered by radio signals, allowing it to be guided directly to its target, an innovation far ahead of its time. Here's a lesser-known fact. The Fritz X was designed to penetrate the thick armor of battleships, making it one of the most feared weapons in the Nazi arsenal. During its deployment, it managed to sink the Italian battleship Roma and damage several other Allied ships, demonstrating its devastating power. But there was more. These bombs were guided by specially trained operators called bomb aimers, who used joystick controls to maneuver the bomb in flight, marking the first use of such technology in warfare. The Fritz X was a harbinger of things to come in modern warfare, paving the way for the precision munitions we see today. It was proof that the war wasn't just being fought with guns and tanks, it was being fought with brains and innovation. Chapter 4. The V-2 Rocket. The Terror from Above. The V-2 rocket, this wasn't just a bomb. This was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile, capable of hitting targets over 200 miles away and traveling faster than the speed of sound. But here's something even more chilling. The V-2 was so advanced that it reached altitudes of up to 100 miles, becoming the first human-made object to reach the edge of space. The V-2 was developed in secrecy under the direction of Wernher von Braun, who would later play a crucial role in the U.S. space program. Over 3,000 volts 2 rockets were launched by Nazi Germany, targeting Allied cities like London and Antwerp, causing widespread destruction and panic. The V-2 was a terrifying weapon because there was no warning, no way to shoot it down. It came from the sky without a sound, and by the time you saw it, it was too late. But the technology behind it didn't end with the war. Many of the V-2 engineers, including von Braun, were brought to the U.S. under Operation Paperclip, where they helped develop the rockets that would eventually take humans to the moon. Chapter 5. The Horton HO 229. The Futuristic Flying Wing. The Horton HO 229, a jet that looked like it belonged in a future beyond its time. The Horton brothers, who designed this plane, were inspired by the natural efficiency of a flying wing, a design that minimized drag and allowed for incredible speed and maneuverability. Here's something you might not know. The HO 229 wasn't just fast, it was the first aircraft to use stealth technology. Its design and materials made it harder to detect by radar, although it never made it to mass production. The HO 229, its influence can be seen in today's B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. Imagine if it had been deployed in large numbers, it could have changed the air war entirely. Chapter 6. Project Habak, the unsinkable ice ship. The project's Habak, a plan so ambitious, so outlandish, it almost defies belief. The British, looking for a way to protect their convoys from German U-boats, came up with the idea of building an enormous aircraft carrier out of ice and wood pulp, known as pykrete. This was not your everyday ice. It was a mixture that was both incredibly strong and slow to melt. Here's a fun fact. Winston Churchill himself was a fan of the project, and at one point a prototype of pykrete was demonstrated to U.S. military leaders. Legend has it that a block of pykrete was shot at during a meeting to prove its strength that deflected the bullet, impressing everyone in the room. However, the project was eventually scrapped due to logistical challenges and the shifting priorities of the war. Chapter 7. The Pandrum, the rolling disaster. Have you ever heard of a weapon so bizarre that it was as dangerous to its own creators as it was to the enemy? Meet the Pandrum, an experimental British weapon that's as strange as its name suggests. The Pandrum was a massive rocket-propelled wheel designed to break through enemy defenses. The idea was simple: fill the wheels with explosives, attach rockets to propel it, and send it rolling toward enemy fortifications. It sounds straightforward, right? But in reality, it was a disaster waiting to happen. Here's the thing: during testing on the beaches of Devon in England, the Pandrum would often veer wildly off course. Sometimes it would head back toward the people who launched it, or spin out of control, shedding rockets left and right. Despite repeated attempts to improve its stability, the Pandrum remained uncontrollable. In one particularly infamous test, it careened toward a group of high-ranking officers who were observing the trial. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but the Pandrum was eventually scrapped because it was simply too dangerous more to the Allies than to the Germans. The Pandrum is a perfect example of how, in the chaos of war, even the best-laid plans can go hilariously wrong. It never saw combat, but its story lives on as one of the strangest chapters in military history, a reminder that innovation can sometimes roll right off course. Chapter 8. Operation Aphrodite, the human-guided drone bomb. Let's talk about a secret project that was both ambitious and tragic. Operation Aphrodite. This was an attempt by the U.S. Army Air Forces to create the world's first guided missile using old B-17 and B-24 bombers. But there was a catch. These bombers were piloted by men who were effectively on suicide missions. The plan was to pack these old bombers with explosives and use them as massive flying bombs. Pilots would take off, reach a certain altitude, and then bail out after setting the autopilot to guide the plane towards its target. After bailing out, the planes would be remotely controlled by another aircraft, directing them to crash into high-value German targets such as V-2 rocket launch sites and U-boat pens. Unfortunately, Operation Aphrodite was fraught with problems from the start. The technology for remote control was still in its infancy, and many of the missions ended in failure. In one tragic incident, Lt. Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., the older brother of future President John F. Kennedy, was killed when his explosive-laden B-24 detonated prematurely before he could bail out. Operation Aphrodite showed the desperation of wartime innovation, the willingness to try almost anything to gain an edge, even at great personal risk. The project was ultimately deemed too risky and ineffective and was abandoned, but it paved the way for future drone technology, teaching invaluable lessons about remote guidance and control. From weapons that never quite worked to those that pushed the boundaries of what was possible, World War II was as much a battle of innovation as it was a battle of arms. These stories of untold weapons remind us of the incredible lengths to which nations will go in times of conflict. They show us that history isn't just about what happened, but what could have been.